division. It's more than just splitting restaurant bills or, calculating discounts.
Right.
Did you know it even pops up in the Bible?
It does. Yeah, Genesis 1.34, God separated the light from the darkness. Talk about a cosmic division problem.
Okay, so we're going from splitting like the dinner tab to splitting the universe in one leap. Let's maybe back up before we go full-on theology. Remind me what makes division unique in the world of math.
Well, unlike its well-behaved cousin addition,
Okay.
division can be a bit of a rebel.
Really?
Yeah, you take closure, for instance. With whole numbers, adding always gives you another whole number, right?
Right.
But dividing, not so much. You might end up with a fraction, which throws a wrench into the whole number club.
Right, like trying to divide a pizza evenly among 5 friends. You're inevitably left with fractions unless you're into really messy slices.
Yeah.
Speaking of pizza and those awkward leftovers, it's a good reminder of the core components of dividend, divisor, quotient, and remainder. But I'm guessing those are just the tip of the iceberg.
Absolutely. Division gets even more interesting when you realize it doesn't follow some of the rules we take for granted with other operations.
Oh.
Yeah. For example, the order absolutely matters in division.
Okay.
10 divided by 2 is a very different beast than 2 divided by 10.
Yeah.
That's because it's not commutative, meaning you can't just swap the numbers around without consequences.
So unlike addition, where 2 plus 3 is the same as 3 plus 2, division is less forgiving.
It is.
What else tends to trip people up?
The fact that it's not associative. You can't just group numbers however you like in a division problem and expect the same result. It's become very important.
Okay.
But there is one helpful property, the distributive property. It allows us to break down a larger division problem into smaller, more manageable parts.
Okay.
Like if you need to divide a big number by something, you can divide its parts and then add or subtract the results. It's a neat mental math trick.
Okay, so division plays by its own set of rules.
It does.
But there's one thing they drill into you early on in math class: can divide by 0.
Right.
What's the deal with that? Why is it the ultimate mathematical no-no?
Well, imagine trying to divide a pizza into 0 slices.
Right.
It just doesn't compute.
Right.
Division at its heart is about splitting something into equal groups.
Okay.
0 groups. That's not splitting, that's just making the pizza disappear.
Right.
Mathematically, it leads to contradictions and breaks the system. That's why it's undefined.
So no dividing by 0.
Correct.
Duly noted.
Yes.
It's almost like it breaks reality itself.
It does.
But if we can't divide by 0, how can we even picture what's happening with division?
That's where visualization techniques come in handy.
Okay.
One way is the hops method on a number line.
Hops. Tell me more.
Think of it like this. You're a rabbit hopping along a number line. Each hop represents the divisor.
Okay.
To divide, you figure out how many hops it takes to reach the dividend. So if you're dividing 12 by 3,
Okay.
you take hops of 3 until you land on 12, which takes 4 hops.
4 hops. So the quotient is 4. That's actually a pretty cool way to visualize it, especially for visual learners. The source material also mentioned vectors.
Yes.
How do those fit into the picture?
Vectors are great because they show us how division can scale things up or down. Imagine an arrow on a graph representing a vector. Dividing that vector is like shrinking or stretching that arrow depending on the divisor.
So instead of static numbers, we're talking about the dynamic action of making something bigger or smaller.
Yes.
I like it. Now, we've been talking about division conceptually and visually, but let's get practical for a second. In our daily lives, we use different symbols and methods to work with division.
Sure.
Sometimes it's the division symbol, other times a slash or a fraction bar.
Right.
Is there a right way to represent it?
The notation can seem like a zoo of symbols, but they all boil down to the same fundamental concept. We have the obelisk of division, the fraction bar, and of course the long division setup, which tends to evoke some fear in people.
Long division, the stuff of math nightmares.
Yeah.
But maybe there's a way to make it less scary.
Think of long division as a puzzle. Each step in the process is like putting a piece of the puzzle together until you get the final picture, or in this case, the solution.
So instead of a torture device, we can think of long division as a puzzle waiting to be solved.
And just like with a puzzle, there's a logic to each step in long division. You're systematically figuring out how many times the divisor goes into each part of the dividend.
It's like each step reveals a little more of the answer, right?
Right.
But before we get lost in the weeds of the actual steps, I'm curious, why is it even called long division? What makes it so special?
Long division comes in handy when we're dealing with bigger numbers that aren't as easy to divide in our heads. It's a structured method for breaking down a complex division problem into smaller, more digestible chunks.
So it's like having a roadmap to guide us through the division process,
Right.
especially when we're working with numbers that make our brains hurt a little.
And speaking of maps, long division actually has some interesting connections to other areas of math, like fractions.
Fractions. You mean that scary long division symbol is actually related to those things?
Not scary at all. Remember how we said a fraction is basically a division problem in disguise? Long division can help us actually solve those problems and convert fractions into decimals.
So if I'm struggling with a particularly pesky fraction,
Yeah.
long division could come to my rescue.
You got it. It's like having a secret weapon in your math arsenal, and it doesn't stop there. Remember earlier when we talked about division scaling vectors?
Yeah.
Well, fractions represent that scaling too, just in a different way.
Hold on, I need a minute to wrap my head around this.
Sure.
We're talking about fractions long division vectors.
Yeah.
It's all starting to connect.
And these connections extend even further. Remember how we were talking about division popping up in unexpected places?
Yeah.
Well, get this. It even plays a crucial role in calculus.
Wait, calculus?
Yes.
The thing that made me sweat through high school math.
It's not that bad.
How does division even come into play there?
Believe it or not, calculus is all about change. How things move, grow, or shrink over time. And how do we measure those changes?
I don't know, tell me.
You guessed it, through division.
Mind officially blown.
It's all about understanding rates of change, like speed or acceleration.
Okay.
When you think about it, speed is simply the distance traveled divided by the time it takes to travel that distance.
So when I'm zooming down, the highway division is helping me understand how fast I'm going.
Yes.
I never thought of it like that.
Yeah. And calculus takes those fundamental concepts of division and applies them to more complex scenarios, helping us understand how things change in a more nuanced way.
You've officially convinced me that division is not just about numbers. It's about understanding relationships, proportions, and even the very fabric of change itself.
Precisely. It's a fundamental concept that underpins so much of our understanding of the world.
So we've journeyed from the book of Genesis to the speedometer in my car, all thanks to the power of division.
That's right.
I have to admit, I'm seeing this basic arithmetic operation in a whole new light.
It really is fascinating.
Absolutely. But for someone listening to this,
Yeah.
someone who might not be a math whiz,
Sure.
what's the key takeaway? Why should they care about division beyond balancing their checkbook?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway is that division helps us make sense of the world around us. It's about understanding relationships, proportions, and how quantities interact.
Okay.
It's about seeing the patterns and connections that might otherwise remain hidden. Just by being a little more aware of division and its many guises, you can start to see those connections everywhere.
That's a really empowering thought, that something as simple as division can give us a new lens through which to view the world.
It's true.
Yeah.
And it's a lens that can lead to more exploration. Once you start noticing division, you'll naturally start asking more questions, seeking out more connections. It's a gateway to a deeper appreciation of the elegance and interconnectedness of mathematics and the world around us.
So the next time we encounter division, whether it's in our daily lives at work or even in our attempts to understand the cosmos, remember, it's not just about numbers.
It's much bigger than that.
It's about unlocking a deeper layer of understanding.